allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Indivisible. Yeah, I fumble that. All right. One thing I did not add here on the agenda was public comment towards the very end. So we will have public comment. So pledges out of the way, project schedule. So we did talk about project schedule last time a few times, but now that we have Chris here, I think it'd be more collaborative. You guys can hear from Chris directly, and it will segue right into the May or options or whatever we want to do. So we'll talk right into that. So that's a good segue. So first things first, I should probably, Jen, I should probably sign on to this Zoom so I can share my screen. So give me 1 second, please.
Matt, I don't think Anna can make it tonight. She may zoom in. I know she's not gonna be here.
Okay. 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. We have- So bear with me, Jen. I'm going to sign in here.
No worries. Take your time.
Oh, I have to go away.
Okay, I'm joining now. There we go. Perfect. Okay, I would like to share my screen, please.
All right, hold on. I have to promote you
She's
first.
promoting. She's promoting.
You can't just walk in. You have to earn the promotion.
That's right.
Really? Oh, man.
Technology.
Okay.
Now you should have all of those options at your disposal. Stop. I don't know what I'm doing. I just guessed.
You're doing a good job. You're doing a good job. All right, I need to share my screen. That's a Jake break.
There you go. I can see
Like
it.
that. Okay, excellent. Let me just minimize my screen here so we can talk through this. All right, so now that we have Chris here, we can revisit this schedule here. So we are in April. We are at 4:10. Right here, the site visit. So we have Chris today. We did some conversations, interviews that went well. We did the tour today. That went really well. We hit all the spots, including some of the hot development areas. So that went really well. Chris, how did you feel in terms of overall flavor of the?
It was perfect. Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw everything. That was very helpful.
Good, excellent. So our committee's next agenda item is on the calendar here for the 18th, but I think we can pull that in, and that's getting all of our comments into that spreadsheet from our perspective. If we're comfortable with that, we can say thumbs up, have at it. We've done our initial pass at the current zoning laws, and so we have provided our initial round of feedback for you. So I guess the question to everybody here is, have you all entered in any comments or input from our session since January? And
We have, but there, in talking with some people, we've all experienced some little blips in terms of just slowdowns, delays in accessing the shared, doc. So if that's a hard, fast rule, if we can be flexible on it, if there's another iteration for another month or more, depending on when the analysis comes out, we should be at least flexible on
So-
that deadline.
I think the general intent was just to funnel the initial feedback, so Chris isn't inundated, just not inundated. So
For that,
I'm
it's,
sure we can probably keep the comments rolling in
Yeah.
and however venue we want to do it, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's intended that.
Okay, so if we're all good with that, we can declare our Zach feedback task 1 completes and hand it off to you, and then as we get more comments, we can either add them to that spreadsheet, let Chris know however he wants to handle them, because going forward, I would imagine input from community members, stakeholders, officials will be coming in anyway. Excuse me. All right, so the next item here, excuse me, that would be I have it on the calendar. We don't have it looks like it's the third week of May, just for I'm sorry, the fourth week in May, just for planning purposes. No date has been set. I understand the last Zach meeting that this was a topic of conversation. So let's kind of segue right into this public workshop that's slated for the end of May. Want to talk about format and what it looks like and topics and things of that sort. However, what is your thoughts on a public workshop at NMA?
Sure. Well, I just wanted to just raise an alternative sort of process that we can do that won't affect the overall timeline, but it's just another way that doing another project, and it seems like it's working well, so that's why I figured that's the same exact project that we're doing here. So I'll however we want to go forward is fine with me. The original idea was that what we would do is have this public workshop, get community feedback. I would take that information plus this giant spreadsheet plus the conversations we had today, and that would all go into this assessment/diagnostic document that we would use. And so that diagnostic would be coming, by the time I synthesize all the information from the workshop, that's like basically towards the end of the summer that we'll be looking at that. And like I said, I think that's an okay way to proceed still. An alternative manner is basically to flip it and do the diagnostic first. And so basically what I would do is take this information from you all as well as my own, again, the information we've gotten today, my own sort of read through of this of kind of ways to proceed and options, and basically then bring it to this group for sort of consensus of like the general path forward. This is sort of the framework for moving forward. And then do the public workshop later in the late summer, or even sometimes it's better to do early fall, to be honest, just because people are traveling regularly. One of the reasons that has a benefit is because the things that the people, the community are going to be providing feedback on are kind of different from, I think, what a lot of the focus here is. So the community isn't going to, generally speaking, care about the format or the overall organization of the document, or the process necessarily. Maybe if they work, had to do some development, they're going to care more about sort of the character of their neighborhoods, their districts. What are the heights that they feel comfortable with? What's the architectural features that they want or don't want? What are the uses? So the idea would be that we would kind of already have our overall structure in place, and then sort of they would be kind of inputting to fill those in. So I'll just, throw it back to this group, how you feel about it. Like I said, I'll do either way you want us to proceed. That's just the alternative way to do it.
I like your way better. Much better, because your point is well taken. The public's input is going to be from the public's perspective. If we have all the work done up to that point, so we have a reasonable approach to answer questions because we've done the work you're talking about, I think it puts us ahead of it.
Okay, other thoughts on this?
And if you obviously you're doing that in this current process you're doing now, that's the way you're doing this similar way. So does it seem to work better? I guess have you done this before this way?
I've done it both
Both
ways. This and there's some community that's the same scope of a project.
Right,
It's
right.
like a full kind of rezoning, and we're doing that, and it seems like that's making sense.
You're the specialist, and do you feel that's a better way to do it? Is
Um,
this way that you're talking now, or the original way?
I
You have
feel
a
like it is,
preference.
I would prefer this alternative measure. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Okay.
But I, again,
No, I tend to agree with Rory. I think it's a better way to, you have some sort of structure, and then you let everybody else kind of fill in here's the basis of what we're doing. And then you have your information to go into it.
Chris, could you tell us a little about what the diagnostic incorporates?
Yeah.
Just to get a better sense.
So in this case, so it'd be a little bit different depending on which approach we go with. So if we're going with this latter approach, the diagnostic would be, first of all, this summarizing what the project is. It's not going to sort of list every single issue that you have in your spreadsheet, but it's going to be a little bit higher level of identifying what the big problems are within and the big opportunities as well. suggestions for how I might rearrange your zoning code, for example, suggestions for how I would say this could look different from what it is today. I mean, one of the big questions is, are we just taking this and amending it, or are we sort of really starting anew, in many ways, even if we're taking a lot of the provisions of some of the language in. And so I would give basically to you all my recommendation that you would then make a decision of, yes, I agree with Chris on this, or I don't feel comfortable with that, so we want to change it. And so it would be almost like a menu that sets the structure of the almost like a blueprint, but without all of the, maybe blueprint's too strong of a word, because it wouldn't have all of the details that would come from the community. Right. That way it is.
Sorry.
Thank you.
How does that, would you work off the comprehensive plan, the master plan that we have to do that so it matches?
So it would be the comprehensive plan. A lot of the information from the comprehensive plan are things I think we want to test with the public. So that's where I think when we talk more about the public workshop, that's where we would have a lot of the types of input that we want to get from the community would be what sort of fills in the almost like the districts. If you think of the districts as a blank slate in a sense, that's what where that information would be helping to fill in. The comprehensive plan doesn't really talk about like the structure of your zoning code, it says to update it, right? And it makes a number of recommendations that are details that I think, a lot of those do make sense, but I think we still want to vet that among this group and then among the public. So that wouldn't affect the overall structure of
And in your diagnostics, it wouldn't be like, it'd be a fluid document or a fluid situation where if the public was like, hate that, and then we all come back and fix it or say yes or no, or
I mean, yes, if you, to the extent you wanted to, except what I would say is, again, this diagnostic isn't going to say you should have this district with this height, right? That's what people care about, or this district with this use.
Would it be an assessment on current state?
It would be an assessment of the current state with a suggestion for the path forward.
Okay.
okay.
But path forward meaning like
An
the
approach.
structure.
A framework or approach.
And I don't think, just because some people in the public say, I don't like that format or that organ, they're probably not going to. And so I feel like it's less likely that you are going to change the overall approach based upon that. That would be, I think, a fairly drastic response.
Okay,
In my opinion.
thank you.
Makes sense.
I'm okay doing it the way you suggested.
Wait, Kelly, you're gonna have a strong opinion.
No, I can see it both ways,
Yeah.
working. But I did tell you this morning that the opportunity for having the public stakeholder meeting in May aligned with maybe our May 16th meeting date, because we have this room, might be a good way to go, because it looks like we're involving the community early on in the process and haven't formulated any final decisions about the direction of the zoning. I'm okay with the way you flipped it, as long as that public meeting doesn't happen during the summer.
Yeah.
And happens when the community is back to their normal pace and schedule. Because we've done that before, where if we time this meeting at the wrong time, we're not going to get people to show up.
Yep.
So the fall is a great time if we're talking about September or early October. And again, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I would like a little more detail to follow up on Margaret's question relative to, this is a big change for this community. So how flexible would that recommendation be? If it's hard and fast, it's not going to change. There may be quite a bit of pushback at a public meeting, which is held later on. But if it gives you a sense of those topics that we've all been struggling with in isolation, because we have not had a readout from each one of the teams as to what their recommendations are. So if there's some flexibility there, I'm okay with that. So either way,
Well, 100%, everything's flexible. I mean, I don't think anything will be hard and fast until we, submit it for adoption.
Right.
So everything can be changed. I mean, I think, just as an example, if we get down to the point, well, sorry, I'll back up. Again, just to reiterate, what the people generally care about is what the future development could look like and how that affects their neighborhoods, right?
Yeah, they've told us that already.
And we know that, and that's what the information we want to get from. So,
And the zoning diagnostic would not go towards that.
correct, exactly.
Right, no, I understand that.
Okay.
You're really talking about a different type of structure for the zoning diagnostic, not the nitty gritty about how it's gonna look and feel
Yes,
in everyday life.
correct.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that, but I'm anxious to hear what everybody else, Matt and Jared and Darvin has to say.
Well, I'll just add to what Mike and Roger said. It makes sense to get the format and the structure, as you shouldn't have, like you said, as much pushback from that aspect. And everyone I've talked to so far wants to know about the nitty details of, like you said, their backyard, their fence line, all those things. That's not what you're doing here, right? So we'll have a chance to get to that later on. So I agree, we should move forward with that approach and then keep the public interest and the conversations going. However we need to do it, if it's on social media or whatever, just keep them engaged, and then when it's time to bring them in later into that September, October, fall timeframe, it'll be the right approach to do so.
And I would suggest October better than September. September's too busy with the school system starting and everything else. So October would be.
How would that work for your deliverables if we have a public workshop at this stage in the game for you?
So I think that's fine because what we will do in reality is where, we have draft UDO, which we're calling this a Unified Development Ordinance, but we just call it the zoning code now. We can start laying that out beforehand. Again, when we talk about the overarching structure, there's a lot of expertise here about the process of the way things run. We can start putting all of that into the draft zoning code, and almost like you have the placeholder for the areas that the community is going to be providing the input. So I think it's okay. I mean, I would, maybe late September would be better if we can do it late September or
Yeah.
very early October.
Well,
But September's always the start of the school year.
It's crazy. Late September, early October.
Yeah.
Do we want to select a date now that aligns with?
Well, I want to hear what Jared and you have to say, Matt. I think we all need to weigh in. It's unfortunate you couldn't get everybody here, but.
Yeah, I'm in favor of having a diagnostic done now, I think as well. And as I recall back earlier when we were getting started, that was initially something we'd all kind of talked about as the sooner we could hear from you on the clear deficits in the existing code and some suggestions on how we organize it moving forward. So yeah, I'm in favor of the alternative approach.
Okay.
My opinion is I want to do what Chris wants to do.
Oh, cool.
Gary. You gotta pick your battles, Baron.
All right, so we are gonna say then end of May for the diagnostic and
I'm sorry, did you say end of May?
Yeah.
End of May for the.
end of May, yeah, because still gonna take a while to write up, even if it's not a
Sure.
super long document.
Okay.
And to synthesize everything you've heard. And I think picking a date sounds good to me, Matt, for the forum.
Yep. Let's do that right now. Strike while iron is hot. Okay, it's already up. Look at that. All right, so we have in September, we have the 19th of September, the 3rd of October, the 17th of October. I would say I would recommend one of these 3 dates we pick.
Yeah, October
Oh,
3rd.
I'm not even, how is this not, why is this not even sharing?
Alright.
Bear with me.
Okay.
I'll have to reshare here so you can see my screen.
No, it's not there. It's October 3rd.
This is for the workshop.
Yeah.
So
Public workshop.
it's Rosh Hashanah,
Oh, okay.
so we might not want to do that.
3rd, no good?
It's Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, yeah, no good. All right.
So September 19th or
So I know, can you switch, like, could you do the 26th and just not do a 19th meeting, or is that?
You what, the 26th?
Yeah, I'm just saying, I know it's not one of your
Instead
dates
of-
on here, but I didn't know if you.
We would have to check with Cornell Cooperative
Oh, okay.
Extension to see if we can get the.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
I mean, I could
Would
check
that,
with them.
would that day work better for your schedule?
Not necessarily, either way is fine with me. I know there was the concern about not being too, about wanting to do it late September, but
Yeah.
either one's fine with me.
The other nice thing would be if we could even check like the community calendar for some of those dates, because if there's a school event that night, we're not gonna get anybody, you know, like a
Yeah.
theater troupe or.
Or like a homecoming or something.
Yeah, or homecoming or a concert.
I won't be,
It's,
not that, well, that's why I said the back, all this,
That's-
teacher conferences are all at the beginning there, meet the teachers and stuff, so you're pretty safe. The end of October, beginning of November, 26th would work out well. I know the third one now, but maybe you can find that out, Marilyn, we can let him.
yeah, I can check.
If there-
See.
Yes,
Actually, yeah, September 26th would.
do you see anything that you guys would object to?
No, it doesn't.
So then Marilyn, you could just get the Matt, just let Matt know, Matt can let Chris know. We use the room. If not, what would be the second date then? We should come up with a
9/20,
second.
The
tentatively
19th
9/20.
is. Because we know we definitely have the room,
Right.
you know, again, as long as there's,
See, now the 19th, that could be close with what things are going on with school.
school.
Yeah, so just. So let's hope we get this.
My school schedule out.
now.
Well, and if
I don't
we
think,
could also pick on October 10th. The week following the third.
right, that would work too, right?
Not sure.
So we got three choices, 9/19, 9/26, or 10/10.
We actually have 10/17 available. That is date we've got this room scheduled because it's a regular SAC meeting. So I can check all those, yeah.
Got plenty of dates.
So is 9/19 still in play or no?
I think those are the three options.
Try to move it as the last, should be the last date. I would try to do one of the other 3 days and make, if we can't get it, then go with nine.
Okay,
So
Are you,
26th and 3rd seem like the sweet spot to me without waiting too long.
the third would be no good.
Oh, that was a shot. Okay, then the 10th then.
Sort of 10th, okay, let's try to hit one of those dates.
10/10.
Are you-
Yeah, whenever we get feedback, I'll fill in whichever one date we choose to pick for the public
Great.
workshop.
Good.
And just,
I have a question. So the product that you're gonna deliver to us, is it based on a template that your firm is using for now form-based code? Is it based on what some other community has used and that you're sold on that? Is it your own creation and recommendations? Is it a collaborative effort from your firm? I'm just,
And when you're referring to not the diagnostic, but the final zoning code, is that what you
well,
refer to?
actually both.
Structure.
Actually both, and what sort of track record,
Ooh.
you know, that has
Yeah.
had for the other communities that you've worked with.
So what I will, there are a few precedents that I like that in terms of their organization and how they're organized that I've been using and incorporating to varying extents. And it ends up being sort of a mishmash of that as well as
Right.
others. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's no one right way to do things. And so to directly answer your question, we don't have like a template that we always use. Like some firms I think do. I think it's better to be a little more nimble than that. And so once we, as part of this kind of diagnostic question, I think what I would do is bring to you, like, here's some examples of like the overall structure of codes that I like and get your feedback on that to see if you're comfortable with it. Because, you know, we're talking about this concept of the form-based code. I mean, it's a whole spectrum of choices, right? And so it's not just a this way or that way, but there's some ways are more different than other ways. So it kind of depends on what the village's comfort is in terms of change, essentially. So that's kind of how in terms of the process, in Fairport, where we're doing this, and I think I saw Matt this earlier. The planner there is very, very strong. They have a very strong village planner who's has a lot of experience, and she previously came from the city of Rochester. That's also going through its own full zoning code. So I'm actually relying on a lot of what's in the new Rochester. It's a brand new zoning code for the process parts. So none of the things like the character, all of that's going to be very different, but the process for approval for applications, I think we can learn a lot from that as an example.
Is that appropriate for a village of our size and scale?
Yeah,
So I
exactly.
was going that way too. So when I think, so I wanted to just address the 800-pound gorilla in the room, so you can put us at ease or assuage some concerns. When I hear form-based code, I think of City of Buffalo and how they're doing it, or Saratoga Springs and how they're doing it. But for everybody else here, why would form-based code or a hybrid version be acceptable for a village where it works perfectly fine for a city? How can that work for us?
Okay. This is like I feel like a test question and
Well, no,
like
it's a loaded question, 'cause we've had this conversation,
Right.
but for the benefit of everybody else, I want to make sure we're all on the same.
compared to traditional zoning. Form-based code, which I don't like to use that word, but basically zoning, the goal of what we're trying to get at is that we want to focus on what is the character of your neighborhoods. And this future approach, I think, will be a much better way to help define what that and sort of dictate what the future development will look like and how that will fit within the desired character than traditional zoning has been able to do. And that's really all we're doing. So you can call it whatever you want, but there will be guidance and standards that are above and beyond what you generally find in traditional zoning. And that's really what it is. There was another part to the question I think that I was going to answer, but then I sort of forgot what that was.
We talked about it being scalable, extensible, so
That
you
was the other
can
thing, right?
expand, contract it to.
It
fit your-
actually lends its, I mean, this in the form-based code as a concept originated in small towns. You know, the first one was Seaside, Florida, and then there's somewhere else. It's used very extensively now in New England, especially in the mixed use kind of New England village. And I don't say village as a legal area, but as in those neighborhoods that are the traditional parts of the community. It works perfectly there because it's actually designed for the small scale things. So I would actually argue it's almost different in a big city that they've had to adapt from to the concept as opposed to someplace like Boston Spa.
All right, let's keep marching through this. So zoning diagnostic, I swapped it out. So zoning diagnostic deliverables due to us 4th week in May. Okay. Well, I'm okay leaving it with just the 4th week in May as opposed to like a date. Are you okay with that? Is everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, leaves it a roll and.
Kind of, yeah.
So then what I would recommend we do is I think this tabletop exercise would be premature at this point because we haven't gotten the feedback yet from the community to know kind of what we're doing. I think that meeting would be better served for us to really debrief, and because this diagnostic is going to essentially lay out options or suggestions or recommendations, I need to know what recommendations you want to follow or what options. So I think really that meeting would be best served by giving us clear direction that I need to start putting together the structure of this zoning code. If that's, again, amenable to this committee.
And will you be doing that in person or on Zoom? The layout, the diagnostic rollout and the options that we will have a discussion on.
Yeah, I think I would I mean, just because of budget reasons, I think I'd most likely have to be doing this on Zoom, this meeting. I don't know that, you know, obviously the public workshop will be in person, but this isn't a huge budget, to be honest, and travel takes up a lot of time and expense. You know, I can come in person, but that comes at the expense of something else, basically. And so
I think if you have it in front of us and you're on there, it's questions of big deal here.
I think this meeting would lend itself fine for Zoom. I mean, I will definitely be in person for things that you can't be, you know, like a workshop. I'm not going to be on Zoom for that. But I think this would be so 6:20.
So, okay, if it's not going to be in June, when does it make sense?
Well, I guess I'm leaning towards thinking that what makes sense is we need to know what the desired development would be, right? And wouldn't that happen after the public forum? Because that's when we're going to hear and get the input for what people are desiring.
So from June 20th, where we'd kind of make some decisions on, based on the diagnostics of the structure you shared with us, we'd come together, discuss it with you, potentially make decisions at that point on kind of the structure we'd want to pursue. But we wouldn't have our public workshop until October or September.
Well, I think we're talking about moving the tabletop exercise. The tabletop exercise would be, you give a scenario and you get Anna and Rory and you run it through the process. It could be whatever scenario that would flex this new approach. And then we would kick the tires, throw rocks at it to see if this is worth pursuing even farther before we eat a budget. I think that was the original intent of having a tabletop. Not fully fleshed out with ideas, but we pick an approach after a diagnostic. We kind of know which framework we may lean into, and then put a scenario through that framework and with planning and zoning to see if how it works out. And we're all going to be here and kind of ease of use. How easy is it to actually get a use case through this approach?
Right, and that's why I'm just feeling like in order to do that, though, we need more structure than we would have
Okay.
by that
Yeah, we don't
period,
have that.
right? Because we don't think,
More information.
yeah, like we need to say, okay, this is, because then once we get the information from the public, then we can start actually drafting the concept and seeing if the concept works.
It might be easier if we were to take an existing or a previous zoning or plan case as a case study, all right, knowing how it was processed through the existing zoning, and then use it rather than try to create something out of nothing and see what the new approach, how it would work.
Yeah, I think if it was something that people that you liked, because I think that's the whole point, is we want something that's gonna work, right? So if there was a
Well,
proposal.
something that's practical, that is to say, something that comes before us that we had to deal with.
Mhm.
All right, and I can think of several in the planning area that would be worthwhile talking about. And I'm sure there's a bunch in zoning, because Anna has more things coming to her board than end up at the planning board. But it would be essentially a case study that could then be taken back to, here are the issues that were brought before the board.
Yeah.
How would we deal with it how would this
Yeah.
new code deal with it? So it would save time and money on your end creating a scenario when we already have one.
I like it.
So that's
Maybe
just a
talk-
suggestion.
Yeah.
And
Do
then
we
the other
still don't
piece of,
need the details from the
Pardon?
public on what our process would be, though? You know, I think it's a good idea, maybe for all of us to get some exposure to.
I thought that's what it
something.
was for.
Well, I guess what I was understanding it is that the tabletop exercise is once we have a new, a new zoning process, including, the guidelines that would be form-based, for example.
Potential process.
Then we'd be able to take a previous case study and say, this is how it worked then, this is how it works in this structure. Do we like that?
That's my understanding.
Yeah, that's not.
I missed that. I must have.
But you were on the same, I thought you were saying the same thing.
Well, all I'm saying is that to create a false or a made up scenario is a waste of time and money.
Yeah, and we have some,
And whenever
yeah.
we do this.
I think we're saying the same, I think you're saying the same thing.
Yeah,
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 I'm thinking, we need to get the team feedback to you as soon as possible. All right, for your work on the diagnostic, because we still haven't done the final team summaries, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so I think if we go backwards, that's the date, that's the number we have to work on first. When are we gonna get that done? So that it gets to Chris, and from there, then all of these other things fall into place.
Sorry, just to interrupt, is that something different from the spreadsheet?
maybe I missed that piece, the team summary. So we spent a lot of time getting all of our feedback, commentary. into
On
the-
a spreadsheet, but we haven't sat down and each team hasn't reported. I believe we discussed it or mentioned earlier that each team was supposed to give a synopsis of their overall input.
Yeah, we haven't had that part of the
Am I
discussion. It's been
right?
in isolation right now. Each team has been isolated, talking about something, putting something up on a Google Doc, but not sharing it with the rest of the group.
Yeah,
No, Rory's correct on that.
I thought that I think that's a critical element for us to do as a group. Then, okay, from there, out of that comes the the bullet points, for lack of a better term, on your spreadsheet that goes to Chris. And
We just changed that though. He's going to give us a diagnostic. And
But he's supposed to be using that information.
Well,
that.
yeah, I guess that
did
was
a whole book, right? I mean,
Right.
Could we do them simultaneously though? Is the summary, I think if we have the feedback in comment form in the spreadsheet, that's probably what Chris could also just work off of.
Oh, yeah.
But for us, maybe then on the May 9th meeting or May
Right.
16th,
Yeah,
we
May,
can spend that time to
that's
discuss.
the agenda for May,
Yeah,
both
I'm,
meetings.
I'm completely fine with that. Just so you know, this is the approach that we took to get our due diligence. We didn't talk about adding in any meeting for summaries and stuff.
okay.
So if we want to use May for that,
yeah.
Yeah,
that, I mean,
But he should take all the notes we have now and start working.
Yeah.
I think you do have what, yeah.
Well, I think I do then. I guess what's
Yeah.
it begs the question, what is the summary for that if I'm not using
I
it?
don't,
only some
I'm
of
not
us
against
where I'm
know
at.
some of the topics,
But
because
we
we
can-
only worked on a particular team, we've never actually.
But who is the
communicated.
educating us or
on the same
Chris?
wave.
I just want to make sure that I'm gonna have, like, I don't want to go by the spreadsheet and draw conclusions from that. If there's
Yeah.
different conclusions, I just want to make sure I'm not missing something
Right,
essentially,
yeah,
that's all.
absolutely.
So if,
Which is exactly what I'm trying to talk to.
yeah,
I,
So might have to just
you know,
back
and
up a little bit.
people had missed meetings, there's been all matter and mean of not necessarily poor communication, just people haven't been here.
when is the
right?
next
And
meeting
so
now?
A meeting or
May
a good
2nd.
meeting with the spreadsheet and all of us sitting
Yeah, May
around the
2nd.
table. Highlighting it and getting it understood and making sure everything that we want is in it, seems to me to.
So we can do the 2nd and 16th and probably get through that. They'll see by
Excellent.
June, you can have,
Yeah,
in June, we're kind of late anyway, then you can spend June getting it ready. If
June.
that works for you.
you
Spend
said,
June
you
getting
said the
the-
diagnostic was
Get your
coming at
diagnostic.
the end of May, correct?
Well,
If we had the
If we had
feedback.
the-
correct. I just, again, that diagnostic is intended to incorporate your feedback.
Exactly, it's predicated on our feedback.
Right, so
Yeah.
can you push yours till June? We'll give you the information by the end of May.
I see what you're saying. I mean, it's like,
Right.
that's up to the committee.
Yeah,
That doesn't affect the overall thing.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like what we're bumping into here too is once we have the diagnostic, if we're not gonna have a public workshop for 3 months, would we just be spinning tires there anyway? So pushing this back,
Right, just let's, sure, on the rating.
is there something that could happen in that interim that we aren't?
Well, like I said,
considering
I
right
would use the time to just kind of work on the start the language for what I can, but I think. If you guys need to do this summary, I think it makes sense for me to hold off on the diagnostic until after you do that. Just because otherwise you're gonna be talking and drawing conclusions and I'll be just. So I think then the diagnostic would need to move till, let's say, end of June, if you giving me this, what date would I be expecting this?
By the 18th, right, May 18th?
Like, yeah, the second meeting in May is the
May
16th.
16th, yeah.
First, yeah, I'm sorry, 16.
And will this take the format of a written kind of summary, or is it just a conversation, or how?
Yeah, we probably just put it in our notes. You just adjust those notes to match so we're all on the same page.
And we're just talking about bullets, under each topic.
Okay.
Because we haven't discussed every part of the code.
Mhm.
So it's just the ones that were assigned.
See, 3 hasn't finished 10 and 12. We've only scratched the surface.
I don't know where
Again,
that,
to my point.
I thought we were done, okay.
No.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
didn't,
when
I
is
didn't
our
know that.
when's our next general meeting scheduled?
I mean, we did our land use, then we.
May
go
2nd.
in the-
May 2nd.
We started the code.
So what we're saying is, we as a group will get our summaries together use the next 2 meetings to do so. Pushing, and then the other piece of that would be moving out your deliverable, Chris, by
Mhm.
1 month to the last week in June.
All right.
So from May 18th to the last week in June is that time you'll have our summaries to work on the diagnostic.
Yeah. And obviously I can start the diagnostic ahead before that
Okay.
and start from the spreadsheet, but
Right.
I think I need that information in order to.
Public workshop, we have 3 potential dates Maryland's working on pending the room availability.
Perfect.
The one that I not,
Summer hits and-
yeah, it is. We'll get a little late in the summertime. What do we want to do with tabletop exercise? I think we still haven't nailed down when that exactly, I haven't moved it from June yet, so it needs to move somewhere here.
After the workshop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere after the workshop, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah,
Get
I
the
think
dust
I think it's
done.
almost essentially around, it's almost testing the draft in a sense.
Yeah.
It's essentially that.
So do you want to
wanna know
align
if
it with,
works.
do you want to align it with draft recommendations?
I think that's.
Be interactive anyway, so I don't know what meant by that, but we'll move that
That's
tabletop.
supposed to be iterative, I wonder.
Probably is my spell check screwed it up, yeah.
Yes, I think that's my recommendation for.
So we get a draft meeting and then.
Like an early draft,
Yeah.
not like a polished draft, but an
Right.
early draft.
That makes sense, sure.
Is there a way to not waste that space of time between July and September with the public comment and feedback? Is there a way we can get that information virtually? Or through a survey or some other forum that can be used in conjunction with the October meeting date for the public workshop? Is that a possible question?
I mean, I see it as a time where we're actually gonna be responding to whatever Chris is presenting to us. And getting to a comfort level. And I like the word iterative, a review of how the proposed change could be applied. Maybe we can take chunks of it out and do our own informal testing. I wasn't aware that the tabletop exercise was part of what your proposal was.
It
No, it was added.
It didn't
We talked about it
function
earlier.
It wasn't, it was.
So, yeah, so it's something that was asked for and it's a great idea as long as we can incrementally start doing small pieces of it in a hypothetical situation.
So tabletop 17th of October or the 11th of November?
Would it be feasible to have a draft of the code within 2 weeks after the public workshop, or a week if it's October 10th? Yeah,
No,
24 hours.
so I was just saying.
Try not to say no as a consensual client, but no, that's.
How much time?
Right here, it's
Would you?
17th, 11th, 11/7.
Or 11.
10/17, 11/7.
11/7.
I mean, I think, where do we have on the, sorry, can you just go back to the other thing? So I feel like that was relatively realistic.
I think what you were saying was get more public information prior to just getting some sort of.
A baseline, source to start, and even with the iterative steps, you say, hey, these are some of the comments and feedback we've
That have
got
come in from the.
public so far. Does it even work with this test that we will back test with a actual plan or case that came for review?
And again. And that would only help you too, any information we get ahead of time.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the village website or on the. I don't think there's any reason why you couldn't put some sort of form, ask a question, somebody's on the site, they're looking for it. They can put something in there.
Yeah, I mean, you can,
And that start filtering it earlier before the actual public meeting.
the challenge, to be honest, is with this type of project is, this is a zoning project. And if you start asking, if you say, give me your zoning recommendations, general people aren't gonna know. And if we open it up too broad, then
gets too
you're
crazy,
getting
right.
a million
Yeah.
comments that really aren't.
Well, I think it's just saying, you got 3 months. You're
So
still in
the-
the middle here.
The idea, I think, at the workshop was a major component of that, I assumed would be first me presenting, and a lot of that presentation is essentially an education component of
Sure.
like, what is this project? What is zoning? What's the relationship to the comprehensive plan? So it's kind of doing that sort of, I don't know, the level setting, so that's the only thing I'm nervous about.
Yeah.
In Fairport, again, I'm just going back to that project, there's a much bigger budget and they're doing like a zoning 101 ahead of time for the community to kind of bring that up to speed earlier. But even there, we're really not gathering the input until it's kind of like, this is public engagement time. And I'm not against it by any means. I'm just thinking through the possible outcomes.
I get it, because you open the door immediately and you don't set a framework and say,
Right.
this is what we're looking for as far as feedback. You'll get all kinds of stuff. But yeah, at least having a basic entry level, here's what we're asking at this point. As a basic, choose this, and your comments could be a simple way to get, a narrowed or normalized view of where people are thinking.
Yeah, our last consultant did a good job of that during the last public engagement process with the comprehensive plan. So that's why I wondered how you were going to structure that, whether it's going to be a small table group of people interacting, coming up with some recommendations, or if it was going to be graphical, a representation of your recommendations and have people informally react to it,
We don't need to hash that out. I don't know.
Okay.
No,
I think we need to stick on track here because it's 10 minutes to 8.
right.
Okay.
If I could throw out one idea that again may simplify matters, all right, to Darvin's point. We have the summer, all right, that's basically open, people travel, whatever, so. It could be possible, based upon the efforts we've gone through for the last 3 or 4 months with this group, of learning the existing zoning. We full well know what zoning is. I don't see why we couldn't have a public meeting or two to just show people what zoning is and what we're doing with it. Again, to save you the time and money of having to educate them. If there's enough interested public that shows up, then good for them, okay? If not, then that tells us something too. But we have enough information coming out of this group exercise for the last 4 months that I think everybody pretty much understands what zoning involves. And if we used a case or two from past history, not necessarily with names or with names, if the people don't mind, it's all public information. We could explain to the public what the process is and where the problems were and what we're working towards accomplishing.
can we do that without increasing the budget? And if we could, I would.
Well, unless you're paid more than I am, and I'm being paid nothing.
It's not gonna be enough. No, I understand that.
No, and that's why I'm suggesting it, okay, if we took the summer period and scheduled 1, possibly 2 public meetings, if you have interest in understanding what the zoning committee has been doing. Come on down and we'll have a chat, we'll explain it to you, okay? That would eliminate a great deal of time on your end.
The concept of starting before this and sort of laying the groundwork is a good idea. If you are willing to do so.
Well, we're getting paid big bucks to do this, man, you're making nothing.
I think that makes sense.
I like the idea too. The only concern I have is, and I agree, Rory, we've all gotten a lot more familiar with what zoning is and how the process works. My only concern would be if we are unable to reach the members of the public who come to those meetings with the detail of this is the zoning now, we're doing something new in the future that's going to look differently, so that if it came back to the public's workshop, then they might have a misunderstanding.
They may or may not, and I think we'd have to take that chance, Jared. I think that's the reason to try to spoon feed them first, okay, with stuff we've already done. Between myself and Anna and members of our 2 boards, plus you guys, I think we could answer a fair number of questions and also point out the challenges.
I think that's the biggest thing right there is point out the challenges currently, and this is why we care.
Yeah, and the building inspector would be integrally involved in that too. The point is that if the public is given at least a taste of what it is we're dealing with, they're going to be able to understand much better where we end up.
I just don't want to usurp Chris's role in this process. Now that we've sucked him in, he has got to be the person to help craft the message because he's crafting the proposed zoning.
I mean, I can put together some bullet points for you to, if that's helpful. I think the general idea would be we want to keep it high level. The reason we're doing this is X, Y, Z. Here's what zoning is, ABC at a high level, not getting to the major
And then
nuances.
focus on the pain points, why we're doing it.
These are the challenges with the existing code, and this is why we're doing it. And X, Y, Z, ABC, and it's very high level. Maybe then a little bit more detail about here's what a special permit is, here's why you go for what's a variance. People don't understand what a variance is versus a special permit in many cases. Some of that language setting, I mean, I think it makes sense to do that over the summer. I think
Right,
it's a good
and
idea.
it buys you time and saves and enables the limited dollars you're being paid to be put towards the very important part of drafting this document and getting us where we want to go.
So to Marilyn's point, to feel comfortable, if you want to draft our bullet point syllabi,
Yes.
That would be awesome.
go off track, it's still staying on his theme,
I just,
and we do the legwork.
No, I'm on board with that. I think it's a great idea to introduce it to the public. My concern is just, I don't want us to be inconsistent with the longer approach.
We'll just make sure we stay with Chris's message over these sessions.
fine with me.
Right, I would leave it open ended, say, the questions will be answered at the end, not at the beginning.
Right.
He does his open forum, that gives everybody the, explain the zoning to them, and then in
You're gonna have
September, you're gonna have the
questions.
chance to talk about
So
it.
I will work on that along with the diagnostic over the next maybe 2 months.
I'll send you my thoughts on what are the various pieces that we have that we could work with.
Okay.
So when do you want to do these educational, informational sessions? June, July,
I would
August?
say June, July, August, okay?
Okay.
Again, I don't know specific dates. I don't know if we need two. We might just try one. I just
We'll see
think
the
it-
turnout again.
I might
It's
recommend
timing, do a
one in
couple.
person, one
Zoom.
on Zoom, because you
Okay.
get different people and often you get more people on Zoom, but some people don't want to be on Zoom, they want to be in person, so I try both approaches. I would not recommend doing it hybrid at the same time, and it tends not to work as well. I think it would be better to do two.
Agreed.
Um,
Particularly if you want interactivity and people on Zoom are not paid the same deference. It's either one or the
One
other.
or
If
the
you're the
other.
majority in the room,
One or the other
people get left
suffers.
out
You-
online, and if
I-
you're online, people in the room are like,
I
these
very
guys
much
are.
so if we're getting the zoning diagnostic in late June, do we still want to have a meeting in July where the Zach discusses the diagnostic
We only
separate
have-
from?
We only have one meeting scheduled in July because unfortunately the first Thursday is the 4th of July. Right.
So I'm just thinking,
Yeah,
'cause I think we want to have
the-
that
the 18th,
discussion and then we can, that's my feedback to you, right, Chris, on what our, pulling off the menu of the diagnostic, we can share our thoughts earlier rather than later there.
Earlier is better.
Yeah, so I think we'd want to do like August and September maybe for these other public workshops.
I mean, these workshops, I don't think are gonna be a huge lift, and I don't necessarily think they have
I
to
would think
be
if they last
mutually
an hour,
exclusive, these things, 'cause they're separate. I don't even know, this whole group doesn't even need to be there necessarily for
I don't think
those.
you're gonna-
It might just be the planning board chair, or, ZBA doing that. I mean, so I'm just thinking again, just a way to think about it.
So potential is zoning info session for July 18th and another one on August 15th.
Yeah, what if you would even do it during a planning board meeting, and just do a meeting and just say we're gonna have on the agenda for whoever wants to come.
Actually, that's really a very good idea, both zoning and planning.
Yeah.
Do that.
Oh, it could be, yeah. Yeah.
Have it actually invite the public to a real meeting.
If that's the case, then I would be okay canceling one or two of these and making sure that we agree to go to support those info sessions.
Right?
So we can work on
Let's
like.
leave that,
the-
we can't, we don't have to nail this time.
Agreed, agreed.
Conceptually, we like it. Okay, we know how we're gonna do it. I think we need to look at what's coming up in the agenda, okay, for these two boards, all right? And if there's a gem that's gonna be coming up that would give us the opportunity to show the full extent of the challenges we go through, it would be perfect.
Okay,
Frustrating, but perfect.
frustratingly perfect. Okay. It's a lot here. Okay, come on here. A lot of delta. All right. So so what is the action item there? You're gonna look into seeing what's on the agendas to see if it's even reasonable to.
Obviously,
then.
there's a lead time to get on the agenda, all
Mm.
right? This month, there is no planning board meeting because we have nothing on the agenda. I do expect that we're gonna have some things coming up towards the summer. I certainly know zoning is going to have things coming up. I think that those dates of when those meetings fall and the ability to invite the public is gonna be dependent upon
Sure,
what the
incumbent upon
agenda is.
agenda items.
But
yeah.
as long as we get at least one exposure for both zoning and planning, I think we've at least had an opportunity to explain what's going on and show people. Because the meeting would be over and that the public, excuse me, that's there would be advised that we would then go through what we just did and how we did it and why.
Yeah. All right, so I recommend. Let's pencil in.
Excuse me.
Let's pencil in our meetings 7:18 and 8:15 for our Zach meeting for planning workshop. And then if Rory can find some
It
agenda
works, right,
items, if it works,
as
we'll
well.
cancel these. We'll pencil them in as
Yep.
placeholders, 7:18 and 8:15 of our meetings. Unless Rory has enough agenda items for us. Okay,
Yeah, and both planning and zoning meet on Wednesdays.
The end.
Planning is the middle,
Second.
Wednesday, zoning is the last Wednesday.
Okay.
all right, so that'll get us through. All right, that goes back. That gives us something over the summertime. Public workshop. We have 3 dates by pencil on the calendar here, but we have 3 dates pending. Room availability, which Marilyn will check in on.
I'll start that tomorrow morning.
Let's see, then we have tabletop exercise that can be either done on 10/17 or 11/7.
So can we stop here just for a second? Cause what I thought I heard Christine was that we wanted not a draft before we do the tabletop, but if that's not what I heard.
That's what it said, yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
I
so
think we
let me
need to
stagger
push
this
that
out a
back,
little
right?
bit. That's fine.
Almost table that until we know when we're getting the draft.
Table the table.
I see what you did there.
Right.
Well, I'm going to put on the calendar. I'm going to put on the calendar as a placeholder though.
Yeah, I think that's.
So I will put the draft so the draft recommendation, so we'll have the public workshop. Public workshop, Chris. We have several dates toward the end of September. Draft, initial draft. I have it here, a third week in October. Need more time than that?
Yeah, I think I would just align it with that number 5.
Like mid-November.
You want mid-November? Well, because that's a tabletop exercise right here. Is,
Okay, yeah.
but I just heard that you want the draft before the tabletop, or is it gonna be aligned?
I thought they were aligned.
That's why they were aligned before, because I
Yeah.
thought so too.
Well, he never gave us really time when the draft would be. ready.
No, I'm just saying we just need to change the draft, but I think it should still be aligned. The draft should needs to move to mid-November where you're putting the other.
Got it, okay. Got it.
So the tabletop would serve as our first chance to kind of test the draft, take the feedback from the tabletop exercise, along with any other feedback we just have from the draft, and then fold it into some iterations.
Okay.
And not to backtrack, but you said the planning board meeting meets the second Wednesday.
Of each
and
month. If there is something on here.
CBA meets when?
The last Wednesday.
Last, fourth Wednesday. Yeah.
Sometimes it's 5 Wednesdays, right?
The last Wednesday.
Falls. Personnel.
Okay. All right, so that gets us the tabletop. Beginning of November. Actually, come on, let's move that over and align that better. First week in November. And then we have another draft in December. Another draft in February, and final. Hurrah. Looks like, hang on, let me zoom move over. In March. Tell me if I'm wrong. So during this time frame, as soon as we have that tabletop exercise and we get the first draft, it's going to be incumbent upon us to sit there and duke it out and figure out what we want, red line it back and forth, what's in, what's out, what do we want? Because at that point, you're going to be waiting on us to get our feedback to you on the draft and kind of it's an iterative approach until
So you feel comfortable.
until we tap out and we're good to go. And
Yep.
Okay. Tag team, wrestling.
MMA, that's what I'm hearing.
I don't know. I'm just saying.
The thing is WWF.
Royal Rumble. I mean, no. Royal Rumbles are the board meetings. We got to come up with their own. And Monday Night Raw, maybe. I don't know.
That's
Thursday Night Raw, whatever they call it. I don't know. I go to the gym, so you guys better catch up. I'm not saying.
I think somewhere, Matt, in this duking it out amongst ourselves as it gets further down the line. I think we're gonna wanna get, a review by the village attorneys, those types of people.
At the right, it's at the same time.
Well, I think probably at the same time, as soon as we hit that draft, that would be the trigger. Same time, it'll go out to all that, and it'll probably funnel in through me if there's all that feedback to Chris, or it'll go right to Chris, or however wants to get it. Yeah, we can't piecemeal, we're going to have to piecemeal the feedback, but we can't piecemeal, because it all has to come back in the next,
Yeah.
next version. And so I'm thinking a little bit of how to version control this, but I'll get there.
I have no doubt.
I'll think about that.
Was that tentative first or second week in November? I'm sorry, I can't really tell. I'm
Sorry. This is supposed to be, I gotta back it up again. First week in
First week in
November,
November.
right, Chris? Tabletop and draft?
Yep.
Okay. I heard very confident.
I know that wasn't great.
Yep.
Do we have a meeting that week already?
Do we have a meeting that week?
Maybe.
We have 11/7. That's why I picked 11/7. Alright, so I'm gonna update this tabletop. And first draft due. Okay. Alright. That takes care of several agenda items. It was the workshop, because we'll work on the formatting and the framework and approach down the road. We kind of massaged the overall approach for the rest of the year. How are we all feeling about where we're at now?
So,
Okay, excellent, fantabulous. It is, oh, it's a little after 8.
late.
I know, I tried, I'm sorry.
Did one help? We started 5 minutes.
See, I'm project managing somewhere in my head.
Yeah.
All right, so last thing is, if we're okay here, then we should open up to public comment. So Jen, are you still with us, or did we put you to sleep?
Oh, no, I'm still here. I'm
Excellent,
listening intently.
I'm sure you are. Is there anyone on the call is besides Nathan? I'll stop sharing.
Sorry, no, everyone, you are all in. Nathan is in and the rest of you.
Okay, so I will open up the floor for public comment, starting with Nathan. And then we'll go to anyone in the room here. So Nathan, it is a little past our time, so I would ask if you could, if you need to have a lengthy conversation with Chris, we're happy to take it offline and set that up, and we can do it another time. But if you have any feedback now, or comments or questions, feel free to have at it.
Okay, yeah, I'll just keep this brief, and I'll give him scenarios, and then I don't need an answer right now, just since it's late. So I'm Nathan Ward, One Hyde Boulevard. Matthew asked the BSBPA, which I'm the vice president of, for any feedback for the zoning that you guys are working on. So just in case you don't know, the BSBPA is comprised of businesses, nonprofit, and residents. So we did get comments, questions, and scenarios from all 3 of those different people. So I just go right through it. Currently, the zoning map has some misspelling, so I'm assuming that you guys are going to review it before you approve it. So hopefully there's not misspellings on any street names. Another comment was there's an adult business zone currently on the map, and we don't have any of those, and we don't want any of those. So I advise you to remove that was a comment. Another comment was the comprehensive plan made a proposed zoning map. So that should be looked at to make the zoning in the village. Here's a question, and if it's a quick answer, that would be nice if it was answered. I know there's a couple R1 residential buildings that have been subdivided into two families, so like one family upstairs and one family downstairs. Is that considered an R1 building? Yeah, that's the last bullet right there. So it's an R1 building, but it's being used as a R2 building because there's two families. Is that considered an R2 building? And how is that going to be considered in the new zoning? That again, there are a lot of those in the village that I know of, and I don't want those to potentially either go away or you know, and then some situations. So I know there's a lot of R1 businesses sprinkled into the R1 zoning. So if that is the same situation in the new zoning map, is that going to be a problem if they want to have a permit done for their building, or if they want to sell it down the road because it is currently a business and they would have to sell it and potentially change it into a residential house since it is an R1. Another scenario is there's a couple R2 apartments in R1 zoning. And if that's true in the new map, how is that going to be considered? Like, are they going to be permitted to, change tenants and be forced to change to an R1 building, even though it's built as an R2?
Well, Nathan, you just provided a ton of rabbit holes.
Yeah, these are great questions, Nathan. These are not very quick answers, so I'm not going to respond to them right this moment. But they're all great.
Yeah, that's
and
fine.
They're all being discussed.
Every one of them is being discussed.
Okay, and then lastly, which is not in my email, there are certain businesses, that are plenty in the village. I'm not going to name anyone because I don't want to, call anyone out. But as new businesses come in that we already have a lot in the village, how are we able to control what we want in the village? So is that going to be dependent on the zoning code, or is that going to be too restrictive? Is it going to be left to the zoning and planning board? And in my opinion, that those boards, if it's left up to them, they should have the power to say, no, we don't want that kind of business. This is, I've been talking to the other board members in my group, and don't really like what is coming into the village. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
We should be all right. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Nathan. Appreciate it. Like I said, still offer if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, happy to coordinate that with you.
All right.
Anyone else here? Yes, Liz.
Things that came out of the comp plan was, and you saw it today, the differences in the neighborhood. And so, dealing with, is the zoning map going to be laid out differently? In other words, there'll be a different code for our more suburban style areas, which are not only up at Colonial Hills, but a few other neighborhoods, Fairgrounds, Chesterwood. Those, will those be potentially a separate set code because they're different? And then, you've got our area high, you've got the more area, around Union Street, that is a lot of business and stuff. So the idea of refining it more to the characteristics of existing neighborhoods. And one thought on Darius's comment about sort of getting public feedback before the workshop. One thing to be, I think, quite successful comprehensive plan process was using comparative photos of, and whether it would be possible to do a survey, where you ask, okay, first of all, where do you live? You could pinpoint, they're on Fairground Hill, and here's a series of pictures, that you look at and that show new construction or new homes or whatever, that would reflect a certain type of, maybe a more, I don't know, a mixed use kind of neighborhood or a pure family, you know, an actual picture, because really when it comes down to it, for the typical homeowner, it really looks like what the neighborhood will look like under this code. Now some neighborhoods are pretty built out, so they might not change, except, you know, I don't know if there's some visual way to show that a single family turned into multi-family. But just that concept where you could get some data from people, more interactive. I'm thinking of when we did the transportation, people were able to put dots in, you know, do that sort of thing, and give feedback more on visual. Have you ever done something like that?
I think at the forum, my thought would be that it would be sort of two parts. One would be presentation, the second part would be interactive. And so whether it's tabletop or it might be, you know, stations like open house, that would be yes, more focused on the build style and things.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of it, you know, putting it on the web. And
yeah.
people would do the exercise and tell you, you know, like you get the input of people living on Fairground Hill. And don't show anything that's much different than it is now, and that's what everybody wants, then you know, you really should keep that neighborhood like it look.
Yep.
I don't know, it's just. Get her.
All right.
You know, then the workshop would, you know, get into that.
Thank you, Liz. Any other comments? Yes, Frank.
First off, Chris, thank you for all your time.
Hold on a second. There's what?
You're unmuted there, Jen.
Hold on a second, hold on.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to Chris for all his time and to everybody that participated today throughout the day. It's been a very rewarding experience to be able to take us through the community, to see the different things we've been talking about. I think even looking at the Angelica building for him gives him an idea of what we're talking about, you know, some of the challenges of the infirmary, etc. Just to reassure Nathan, one of the top topics that I talked to Chris about probably a couple times today was pre-existing non-conforming uses and their treatments. I think the biggest poster child for how things can go wrong for not handling them correctly is the infirmary, because pre-existing non-conforming fell away after 1 year of non-use, and now it's the largest single-family home in the Village of Charleston Spa, because that's the R1. There's no way to get the zone back in our existing code. So it's a question of both, how do we embrace uses we were used to and accept, and also how do we make sure that we have flexibility to say yes or say no. And that's the stuff that's kind of going to be important for this committee to look at and for Chris to work with you on. Also, though, just on the flip side, what Nathan said, you can't flat out prohibit a certain type of business. You have to, in terms of prejudice and discrimination, you can't do it. What you can do is, you know, spot certain issues related to certain types of businesses. For instance, cannabis. You may be able to say, for health, safety, and welfare purposes, not to keep it near a park, for instance. And so that's something you could look into in that realm, or even a vape shop. You want to say for smoking purposes in a non-smoking park vicinity. But the deeper you get into the weeds, the more risk you run in those situations. And so those are the types of things you have to be looking at just from a legal perspective. So that's more, you know, for Carla to give an address ultimately than even Chris on that type of thing. But that's why our business community has to understand we only have so many bullets that we can use in this type of fight. And, you know, to a certain degree, marketing the village to other types of businesses is going to be the strongest and best way of getting the businesses they're looking for here.
Yep.
Also, speaking of the cannabis, isn't that actually under farming and agricultural? Aren't the rules different?
You can add to the rules, you can't subtract from them. So the rules in general from the state right now are for our size community, one in a 2,000-foot radius in the municipality. If it goes to Russell's Deli, it still leaves Front Street exposed because it's just more than 2,000 feet in the radius on that. And so there's that, the 500 feet from a school on the same street, 200 feet from a house of worship on the same street. I think there's one other that's not really that applicable here, but those you can add to beyond that as well, if you have a health, safety, and welfare rationale in your community to go with it usually.
What district is that still required?
I knew it is, but
That's what we.
We've been asking that question there months.
It's a great question for
You
Chris.
you generally need to do the First Amendment rules, have allow adult uses. It doesn't need to be its own district. Often you would put it in like the industrial district, that those allowable uses in an industrial district or some other place like that. So that's generally the way that's been handled.
That's where our kids recreate. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really where the pool is, it's where
Well,
Kelly
it
Park
could be
is,
somewhere
so-
else. I'm just telling you that way.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
They can find more adult fun on their phone.
Right, anything else?
All
right.
Here we go.
Jen, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Give me a second just so we can make.
Not a
that-
problem. Sorry that I interrupted there at the end.
So Matt, it sounds like
You're all good. It's all good.
we're canceling the meeting tomorrow morning.
Good
Thank
night,
you.
guys.
Okay.
Good night.
So, nice.
You're telling me.